Hey, what's up? This is how I mixed a synthwave meets rock, indie rock kind of song. Muse meets The Weeknd. It's called Space Riot by DANTE. You can stream it. It's come out today. It's released today, so I thought I'd make a breakdown video of it. My name's Rollo. I'm a producer and mixing engineer from Australia. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I make videos trying to help other producers and mixing engineers and artists kind of learn how to produce and to mix. If you're an artist or a producer looking for a producer or a mixing engineer, you can hire me, hit me up. There's a email in the description as well as my website. Let's get into the video. I don't even know where to begin with these kind of longer breakdowns. I'll play maybe one of the more big choruses as a starting point, and then we can kind of dive into the various parts as quickly and time efficiently as possible.
You can shout it out, you can shout it out. Never know you've been let down before, but it's not over now. I know you've been so scared to speak aloud. You can shout it out, you can shout it out.
This song was pretty quick on the turnaround side, so I was mixing definitely with just trying to go off the feel. I wasn't thinking too hard about exactly what I was doing. It was more just, oh, that's a problem, let's deal with it. DANTE and I have also done quite a few songs in 2023, 14, 15. All of them were more indie rock, so this was kind of a different vibe. So I feel like as a mixing engineer, I'd kind of gotten a feel for how to mix DANTE's stuff. This was different, so it did require a little bit of a different headspace, which was fun. I enjoyed that quite a lot. So let's start with perhaps the drums. DANTE's programmed all of this stuff using Logic and various things. Kick is a Lindrum. So what I like to do to start with my kind of core drums is I like the Lindl 80 channel, and I like using it just in unity with no EQ or anything like that, and just boosting the gain so it starts to saturate. I'm going for that, but then I kind of dial it down so it's subtle, just kind of adds a bit of color to everything. I do that with the snare, this big snare here. The snare, I think I've done it with all of the drums. Oh yeah, I've done this with all the core drums. Let's listen to them with and without. It's pretty subtle. To me, it just kind of makes a bit of warmth to the mid-range, which I really like. Just kind of like warms it up, gives it a bit of color. I will say, with samples, I tend to try and not, and perhaps I just suck at mixing, but I try not to EQ things if I don't have to. Samples tend to sound really good. If you're recording live drums, obviously they're going to be, sometimes you need to really push them how you need to push them. Samples, we choose them, right? We choose what sounds good, so we don't necessarily need to then try to make them something they're not. If there's something that we don't want, we just choose another sample. I kind of use that mentality with drums when I'm kind of mixing them. Just if they sound good, cool, let's work with them. If I need to change them, I can change them. The drum bus is definitely where I do quite a lot of processing, trying to glue everything together, make it pulse and feel nicer. Also with drums in general, it's all the levels, right? It's getting the kick volume right, the snare volume right. You get the levels right, everything kind of comes together pretty quickly. So the drum bus will make a big difference. Let's listen with it and without it. So without it. Honestly, not as big a difference as you'd think. Running into the API 2500 bus by UAD. Just taking a bit off. 1 dB on the kick. Into Fab Filter Satin. I think this is a preset. Again, adding a bit of that kind of mid-range in. Oh, it's barely even doing anything. Subtle. R bass, 63. That's kind of the frequency. That's just adding a bit of low end to all of the drums. I like putting it on the drum bus because it adds depth to the snare as well as the kick and the toms and the hi-hat to some extent. Next I've got standard clip. Just taking off the snare, really. Bit of saturation. The philosophy here is if I can kind of reduce some of the clips, I can push it louder later. Just kind of cutting off the things that jump a bit above everything else. And Valhalla Vintage Verb. Just a little bit of space. Pretty subtle. Like with many things I try to do, subtle is good. I've also got these big claps that I sort of abuse in many songs. Just sort of signaling different parts of the chorus. Just kind of adds a bit of kind of sound, which is nice. So there's a few basses in this song. We've got the hectic kind of synthwave bass that starts the track. Rolling off 40 hertz on the SSL channel. I think that's all I'm doing. I'm dipping 1.4 at 200 with a shelf just to kind of clean it up probably. I've got a sidechain compressor with just Studio One's compressor going into the kick. So where's the kick? -2. Just to give it a bit of pulse. I've then got Micro Shift by Sound Toys at style 3. This thing is cool. It's basically a chorus, I would say. It just kind of detunes it so it makes it wider, which is really nice. I feel like for bass, sometimes just having it in the middle is nice. Sometimes you want it to be just huge and all encompassing, so it's nice for those kind of things. You can just use a chorus to get that effect. The next bass we've got is this art bass in the verses, which again, I'm sidechaining. Just, I think because there's a 4 to the floor with the kick, I just wanted to have that kind of constant pulse. I think the basses already do have that pulse, so I'm just sort of furthering that with a bit of kind of dipping. 112 hertz on the SSL, mainly because I was struggling a little bit to get the chorus to pop. So I thought by making the bass less intense, it would sort of make it feel bigger when a deeper bass came in.
The life stays the same. Keep talking so tongue-tied.
And then into this kind of the first proper chorus, we have this bigger bass that comes in. Sidechaining as well. So it does the same thing, kind of just by sound choice, right? The verse is high and the bass is an octave or 2 octaves below, so it feels huge, which is kind of helpful. I'm processing it the same, just micro shift. I'm not EQing off, which is lazy from my part. I probably should have gone through and tried to EQ and maybe compress, maybe try to even out the notes either by EQ or compression, but again, I was working fast and it felt good, so I kind of went with it. We've got this kind of additional chorus bass, which I've got satin on. Subtle stuff. Pro Q3. I see him trying to kind of clean it up for the vocals, but interestingly, I didn't roll off any lows, so we went with it. And then also sidechain once again, sidechaining all the bass. I think it's really important when you're dealing with drums and bass to kind of work with them together. Make sure that they feel good together. With no processing. More pulse. I usually start with drums and bass and then kind of move on to vocals. So let's have a look at the vocals.
It will change.
So this is kind of an intense vocal chain, to be honest. I was doing different things because DANTE really wanted like a more distorted vibe, saturated, distorted kind of lead. I'm using Autotune Pro. If by any chance you'd like to get Auto-Tune Pro or any of the other Antares products, there is a affiliate link in the description. You can get 14 days of a free trial, so you can trial out all this stuff. I get a little cut of it. It's pretty fun. I like it. So I'm doing some pretty intense auto-tuning here.
It will change in another life, stays the same.
We just wanted those kind of movements between the notes. I've gone through and used Melodyne on everything, as I always do, just to make sure all the notes are nice. And then auto-tune's in effect. I'm using RX10 Mouth Declip, just does a few notes.
It will change in another life.
Kind of compressing relatively hard with the UAD 1176, fast attack, slow attack, fast release. Satin, I think, is coming in and doing quite a lot of work here for some saturation.
It will
Gentle saturation.
change in another life, stays the same.
Yeah, boosting some treble and presence, really just giving it that grit. Pro Q doing some work.
It will change in another life, stays the same.
Just trying to get rid of some of those
Will change.
kind of low
Will
humps. It's probably dealing with some S's. Just like sibilance, and then a bit of air, which probably didn't need it. I'm using a transient designer because I was listening to a podcast talking about transient designers. I think I'm just kind of trying to take off a bit of the really loud parts and perhaps the stain.
It will change in another life, stays the same.
I will say I don't really use transient designers a ton, especially not on vocals. Kind of using it as a compressor. Mag, the airband, 20 kilohertz, and then quite a big bump, really.
It will change in another life.
I guess with the distortion, it just sort of makes it a bit more airy, so that's nice.
It will change
And then there's de-esser.
in another life, stays the same.
Definitely does stuff. And mix tool, can't remember why I did this instead of using a fader. I think I'd gotten my faders good, but then overall I needed less or more. Less, I guess, so I just used the mix tool just to do that, so I didn't have to re-automate stuff, just kind of being lazy. So without it,
All alone at night, just behave. All the things they say. All alone at night, just behave.
so quite intense. But that, again, was the vibe we were going for.
I know you've been let down before.
So the processing is quite similar. I think it's missing one or two things. The saturation is more intense on the chorus,
I know you've been let down before.
but it's pretty much the same kind of general chain. There's also this falsetto in the chorus that has even more stuff. The main difference, I think, is I'm using outer space. Auto-tune, I think, is at 100%. Yeah. And also Silk Vocal to kind of tame by Waves. It was free. I don't know if it's still free. It's pretty cool. And together they kind of create this big
I know
thing.
you've been let down before.
There's a strew of backing vocals. Sounds nasty. And then also the octave up.
I know you've been let down before, but it's not over now.
And altogether they sound like quite a thing.
Babe, I know you've been let down before, but it's not over now.
Using the trusty old workhorse Valhalla Vintage Verb, Valhalla Delay. These are for vocals. Also, I don't usually do breakdowns like this. I tend to do kind of more short form content. So let me know how this is feeling. I've kind of, I guess, like, as I'm making this video, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'm kind of doing a bit of like, I did this and then I did that and wow, then I did this. You know, it's kind of, just feels like it could be more interesting, but I don't really know how to do it. Maybe I should watch other people doing it. But is this helpful? Are you kind of enjoying how I'm just like walking through everything? Because I'd love to be able to help more than I am. So please let me know if there's a way that I could do this better. I also have these backing vocal, Valhalla Vintage Verb and H Delay doing its thing, ping pong style. Bit chaotic. I like it. I think most other notable thing here is this insane whisper we did. Dante whispered it. I put it through Rock Rack by Plugin Alliance and just cranked it. Kind of Muse, you know? So that happens a little bit throughout the vocals. Something I find really hard is getting the balance of the vocals to be right. I don't think I get it right, really. Like, I mean, like, it feels like one of those things that you never are happy with, at least my experience. Getting the balance between the kick and snare in particular, bass and vocals, and then building everything off that feels like the kind of the most important thing. Getting the balance between those kind of core three elements and drums sort of at a bigger level. So
Babe, I know you've been let down before, but it's not over now. I know you've been too scared to speak aloud.
So it does feel pretty good. Perhaps it's too loud, perhaps it's too soft. I think vocal volumes, as you know, when I'm mixing people, that's always kind of one of the things that everyone has different opinions on. You know, someone's like, oh, this vocal's far too hot, or someone says, oh, it's far too hot being loud and far too quiet. You know, it's very subjective, so it's hard to get right, I guess. Okay, guitar time. Let's speed through these. Dante uses the fractal audio pedal, so kind of like a Kemper, but the other one. It sounds great. Most of the time I just need to do a bit of cleanup. The tones are always awesome. He's a killer guitarist, so it's kind of just cleaning up like rumbles and things like that. These chorus guitars are perhaps the most important thing. Sound just awesome. Very 1975. So I'm using a bit of saturation, and I love using the SSL 4000E by Plugin Alliance and Brainworks on most things, but particularly guitar. Rolling off to 250, boosting a bit at 4.9, no compression. I'm doing this the exact same on the other side, so without it. Boring. Just adds like, just adds a bit of like hiss, I think. in a kind of cool way. So without, then with, just a little bit brighter and more fun. In the bridge, we've got these kind of cooked guitar and the EBOs. So I'm having to roll off a lot because it's quite space consuming. We've got these two EBOs running into this this bus. I just thought having kind of pulse would be nice there instead of just like a really held out stagnant thing. The panning I think is important. You know, I'm kind of throwing things left and right just to, as much as possible, try to keep stuff out of the center where there's some important things happening like the snare and the kick and the vocals. But again, I'm just doing subtle moves here. Yeah, just cleaning it up. Sounds great. I like the SSL 4000E because it just adds like, I don't know, I find it's a really easy way to give this like, it's not treble, it's like excitement, which I guess kind of comes through the treble. I just, more than anything else that I use, it's just, if something feels dull, just kind of boost some stuff on that and it's just like, this is the main guitar riff that happens in the choruses. Rolling off a lot, boosting a bit at 8K and 3K, which I just messed up. Then going into the Arturia Spring, 12.5%. And then finally Outer Space for a 16th note delay with a bit of intensity. So I guess I didn't want as much punch. I wanted it to be a bit more like ethereal and in the background. And then we have this verse guitar. Same situation. Just doing a bit of cleanup with the SSL. We're almost through it. Hang in there. Just have some synths. It'll be kind of the same with all of this stuff. This synth I'm just EQing, rolling off. That's all. Just rolling off, running into satin for a bit of saturation. It's kind of just an ambient pad. Pretty subtle. Have this chorus synth. That's a difference. Compressing, boosting, cleaning up. There's this awesome piano in the dropout, which is mostly Dante. I've just added reverb. Just rolled off. These horns. I've done the little saturation trick. I think it just adds a bit of like warmth. Rolled off. Added attack and reduced sustain. I wanted them to be more explosive. And then they're going into a horn reverb, which is just the intensity reverb by Arturia. My camera's going to die soon, so if I drop out, that's why. There's these verse flugelhorns, which I haven't even processed. I've just panned and turned down the volume. Sounds good. They didn't need to be touched. There's this vinyl effect on the intro horns just to really mess it up, rolling off. And then there's some loop with some, it's like a build up with some delay on it. Speeding through the last parts, which perhaps are the most important. I'm running all of the instruments into a all instrument bus where I've got track spacer. I'm sidechaining the main vocals in, and I've got the ratio at 9%, low cut up to 73 hertz. Basically, this just kind of dips the frequencies of the vocals. That's the vocal there.
Babe, I know you've been let down before, but it's not over now.
It just helps get things out of the way. It's kind of a cheat, but I think it really helps, and it's subtle, so it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go to 100% on it. Less is more. 9% is a lot. I do a lot of work with the mix bus. Oh, there goes the camera. We'll go through this quickly. I run into the Townhouse bus compressor by Plugin Alliance.
Babe, I know you've been let down before,
Kind of 2 dB.
it's not over now. I know you've been to
Just a bit of a high shelf on this EQ, also by Brainworks. Ozone Imager at 7% to widen it. I really like this tape by Kive Audio.
Babe, I know you've been let down before.
Taking 1 dB off or so with a little bit of saturation on the 15. Oversampling it forward just kind of adds a bit of grit and color. I abuse this thing. These settings are too high, but you know what? We do what we do. Golfos Master.
Babe, I know you've been let down before, but it's not over now.
I will say I'm over processing on this mix bus. It did what we needed to do, but I think kind of in hindsight, I wish I'd gone a little bit easier. This Exciter by Ozone 11 just to add some more kind of distortion.
Babe, I know you've been let down before, but it's not over now.
Just, yeah, adds kind of color and grit, which I really like. I don't use this often, so this was kind of experimenting. I just used a preset and tweaked. This is an important plugin that sounds fantastic. The God Particle by Cradle.
Babe, I know you've been let down before. Babe, I know you've been let down before, but it's not over now.
So this thing is really good at getting it loud because it's got just a lot of processing happening. I'm boosting a little bit at the highs, reducing the mids, limiting kind of -3 on the gain reduction. And just kind of like, I don't really understand how this plugin works aside from it does a lot of things. I just feel like it just helps, right? Like it just kind of helps me mix faster.
Babe, I know you've been let down before.
It kind of spreads it.
Babe, I know you've been let down before, but it's not over now.
Alright, let's turn all of the mix bus processing off.
Babe, I know you've been let down before, but it's not over now. I know you've been so scared to speak aloud. You can shout it out, you can shout it out. Babe, I know you've been let down before, but it's not over now. I know you've been so scared to speak aloud. You can shout it out, you can shout it out.
And that is Space Riot by For Dante. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, like the video, hit subscribe, all that stuff. If you enjoy the song, go stream it, help Dante out, go share it with your friends and your family, all that fun stuff. If you need a mixing engineer or a producer, hit me up. If you use Studio One, there's free presets in the description. I will catch you all later. Have a wonderful day. Bye.